Hi everyone, it's really nice to see you. Jules here. I am just going to adjust that focus. I am about to have a chat with Kerri Snook from Bouchette Design Shop. We're going to have a chat about her decks today. So let me just see if I can get. There we I think. Ah, there we go. Hi, Kerri. How are you?
Hey, good. How are you?
Excellent. How are
Good.
things in your neck of the woods? I know you guys have been hit with a huge heat wave. How are you
My
doing?
gosh. That was crazy. Yeah, and we don't have air conditioning out here in general, so
Yeah,
but it's gorgeous now. Sunny and normal. Yeah.
oh, I'm so glad. I'm so
Yeah.
happy to hear that. Yeah,
Yeah.
got lots of people out on the West Coast, so I've been thinking about everybody because it's tough. I know we lived in Victoria for a while, and air conditioning wasn't something that we really even needed because the hot days were so few and far between. So it's
Yeah.
yeah.
It's changing. It's really crazy, but we I think we need AC now on the West
Yeah,
Coast.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. How are you doing?
Oh, excellent. Yeah, it's actually really cool here today, which is not so bad. It's going to heat up for the rest of the week, but
Yeah.
I've been thinking about everybody out west as I put my sweater on to go for a walk this morning. It's a big
Yeah.
difference. Yeah.
Yeah, I know when we get like, I just love the cool weather. So it's really weird when it's too hot. I'm like, no,
Yeah.
I'm not used to that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I grew up in Alberta, so we got really, really cold weather in the winter. It was very dry though, and here in Nova Scotia it's more of a damp cold, but it doesn't get quite as cool. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a bit
Oh,
different, but
yeah.
yeah. Yeah,
Oh, good.
so excited to chat with you today. This is amazing. For anyone who doesn't know, which I'm sure is no one, Kerri is a creator behind Bouchette Design Shop, and she's done the Meraki Tarot and the Numinous Numerology deck, which just landed on Etsy, which is absolutely phenomenal, and also the Radiant Crystal cards that are so incredible. Oh my goodness, they are so fabulous to work with, and I'm so excited to talk to you more about this. Oh my goodness.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm so excited to be with you. And I mean, I love it that we get to chat now because we're always talking kind of just through, text or words. And so this is
Yeah.
great. Yeah, I love
It's
it.
so nice to put a face to a name and an account and a creative project. It's
Yeah,
just awesome.
yeah.
Yeah. So I noticed I popped on your Etsy page and I noticed that you are an interior designer by trade. So tell me more about that. That's fascinating to me. That was one of the things that I considered going into actually.
Oh,
And I'd love to know what drew you to that particular field and how that has influenced your tarot projects.
yeah. So, yeah, I think, well, it's been about 26, 27 years I've been doing interiors, and I work with corporate.
Okay.
So mostly then on the West Coast, because I was in California for a little bit, is tech companies. So
Okay.
all the big tech guys, so
Yeah.
really just, I mean, I love it because, and originally when I got into it, I wanted to do it because it's creating space for people just really changes the whole spiritual nature of how people feel when they come into a space and how they interact and how their day goes and what they bring home with them. So
Yeah.
um, really, I think interior design is just amazing for that. It just changes more than we know, because
Mhm.
space is so important to how we feel and think. So yeah, I've been doing that for a long time, and just, I mean, design and illustration is just kind of part of my everyday. And
Mhm.
so it all interacts together just beautifully, just because I'm constantly designing. Like, I feel like every day I'm just, spitting stuff out of my head, whether it's for space or illustration or what have you. So,
Oh, amazing. I
yeah.
love how it all blends together. It's so true though, like living space makes such a difference, even just little tweaks around paint color and moving things around and
Yeah.
constantly reorganizing. And it's amazing how much it shifts the space in your brain as well. It's really
Yeah.
cool thing. Oh,
It's
that's so cool.
huge. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so I know you're in the Pacific Northwest, which is one of our favorite spots, actually. We spent 20 months traveling across North America in an RV with our kids before landing in Nova Scotia a couple years ago. And the Pacific Northwest was one of our favorite stops. We went through Oregon and Washington coast and visited all kinds of lighthouses and went on tons of hikes. And I mean, after spending so much time on Vancouver Island, like it feels like home with all the redwoods and all of the greenery and foliage and everything. And I was just wondering how that came into play with your Meraki tarot. Like I know there's a lot of natural influence, and to me it feels very based in the Pacific Northwest. And I was just wondering like how you chose to incorporate that in your design, and yeah, just anything you
Yeah.
think about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I grew up in the Midwest. So I grew up in the burbs of Ohio, of Cleveland,
Okay.
Ohio, and actually it was really beautiful out there. It was full of it feels actually a lot like Washington State, which is interesting for being out there. Lots of metro parks and such. But I've been out here for about 7 years, and it's kind of interesting because I love the outdoors. I mean, camped forever and whatnot, but I'm more of a homey person. Not necessarily I would go camping now. So
Yeah.
it's funny because I live out here, and I do love nature walks and things, but I don't like, I'm not like in the woods looking at like millions of animals
Yeah.
and such, but I just love that feel. It's interesting because when I started the Meraki Tarot, I tried to draw people at
Hmm.
first, but I just wasn't connecting with it. Um, I find that in decks in general, I have a little bit of a harder time connecting with people in
Okay, that
decks
makes
than
sense.
if it was nature. And
Yeah.
I think for me, like the nature and the animal and the just that whole vibe and feeling allows me to put myself in it
Hmm.
and experience each card without having the influence of another person. So
Yeah.
that's kind of how the animal and the flora fauna kind of came into the Meraki Tarot, and I mean everything out here, like you said, is so inspiring. I mean everything is green all year long, no matter winter, no matter what the season, and
Hmm.
there's always beauty around. So that's what was also really inspiring to the deck. And I love, again, just being a designer, I love color.
Yeah.
I love saturation of different colors and how color works together. And I feel like there's a lot of that out here in the Pacific Northwest, is, with the
Hmm.
mountains and the sunrises and the sunsets. And
Yeah.
um, I love sky. I think if anyone would say the Meraki Tarot has a lot of sky in it, like a lot of different skies in it.
Oh,
Um,
it's beautiful. Yeah, I love that element.
yeah, and that I would say that that is definitely something that I see out here all the time that's
Mhm.
inspirational. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, the imagery is just stunning. Like I find I can so relate to what you said about nature decks and pulling you in. I feel like there's more neutrality in that. It's more possible for me to insert myself into that environment because there isn't a preconceived idea of what something or someone should look like. Let's say tarot, sorry, court cards, for example, there can be very set kind of ideas of what those images should be. And I love the neutrality of animal decks because there isn't as much gendering and there isn't as much kind of set perception. So it opens it up, I feel, to a much wider perspective, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I also kind of felt like it was for all ages. Like I see the
Yeah.
Mermaid Tarot for children,
Mhm.
whomever, and I think there's just that sweetness, to all animal
Yeah.
decks, all kind of nature decks that
Yeah.
allows anyone to be drawn in. Yeah.
It's such a nurturing deck. Like even some of the more traditionally challenging cards, like the Devil and the Tower and everything else, like those can still be challenging cards, but there's a softness and a nurturing energy to them in your deck that I really love. And my kids have fallen in love with it. Like we love flipping through, and they really appreciate all of the artwork, and we're commenting on how beautiful it is. And none of them are as into tarot as I am. My eldest is
Yeah.
probably the closest, but it's still fun to go through and look through imagery with them and talk to them about it because I love that tarot tells a story when you're going through the major arcana and even the minor arcana, and that things connect together and build, and there's cross messages, and it's really quite an amazing practice that way.
Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely. Oh, I love that.
oh yeah, it's something, it's fun to share with them. Like, it's not necessarily their thing, but every once in a while we'll still pull cards, and it's
Yeah,
fun, and it,
I do the
that's
same with
oh,
my, I have two boys. I do the same with them. Yeah, they're not totally into it,
yeah.
yet, but yeah, they do love seeing the illustration and
Oh, that's
yeah.
amazing. How old are your boys?
11 and 14.
Oh, cool. Yeah, my eldest is 13, my younger daughter's 12, and then my son is 9.
Oh,
So,
great.
yeah, all
Yeah.
around the same
Yeah, those
age.
are
Yeah,
fun.
yeah.
Yeah.
They are. Yeah, I was
They
kind
have
of bracing.
opinions.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And I was kind of bracing myself for the teen years, and some days are interesting, but
Yeah.
we're staying connected and open lines of communication, and so far so good.
So important.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
It's a
yeah, no, that's good. Yeah, I find with tarot too, it's such a nice way to reflect and to tune in. And I feel like when you're in this stage of life where you're going through all the shifts and changes and things are moving around, it's nice to have that anchoring point. Do you know what I mean? That you
Oh,
can get
yeah.
back to. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Oh,
that's
I love
awesome.
it.
Very cool. I was so curious too to know what your creative process is. Like, I'm not a visual artist at all. I'm more of a writer than anything else. And I'm always so in awe of people like you that can create these beautiful images and bring all of these themes and ideas together and just have it come alive. Like, so many of these cards in all three of your decks actually feel so tangible. Like, it has that sense of being present in that moment. And I'd love to know, like, what was your inspiration for the different cards and also the different decks, and how did it change between each one? I'm curious. That's kind of a loaded question, but you can
Yeah.
pick one.
No. Oh, I love it. I love it. Um, so for the Meraki Tarot, the way that deck took me, I would say about 2 years. The way
Yeah.
I started it was the whole deck was illustrated off of intuition and my knowledge of working with tarot, which I started around 15
Oh
years
wow, that's
old.
amazing.
So yeah, so that whole deck was, and I'll say some people have said, and everyone is right, that some of the cards are some of the illustrations feel a little different than the next, right? That
Hmm.
there's a little bit of a difference there, and I agree with that, and I say that I think it was based off of, I was designing the whole deck off of intuition, off of
Yeah.
what each card meant and how I was feeling the illustration as I was drawing it.
Hmm.
Um, so I think the deck is very based off of kind of a whimsy in that way.
Yeah.
Then I went back because I actually, when I started tarot, I started learning from the Thoth. So I
Hmm.
had Thoth like forever, and then I started jumping into Rider Waite, and
Yeah.
so then after I had illustrated the deck, I went back and I really looked at the Rider Waite
Yeah.
and kind of paired it up and thought, okay, yeah, this is missing. Maybe I need to add this, and I do all my rendering in Photoshop. So the whole deck was rendered with a pen tool
Oh,
in
gorgeous.
Photoshop.
That's
It's
awesome.
on kind of like a large scale computer, so I just kind of
Yeah.
draw right on there. And yeah, so that's how kind of that process went, which I think is why it took a couple of years, because I rendered it and then I paired it up and then I kind of went back and really rendered again. And also too, I think you probably feel the same when you're a designer, you have that influence in your soul or in your bones.
Mhm.
Nothing is ever done.
Yeah.
And yeah, nothing is ever done. And I'm kind of the person that loves change. And I
Hmm.
think that's because I crank out so many spaces. I'm constantly designing space, but I love change. So for me, even if a card is done, I may look at it a month later and be like, no, I need to redo that.
Yeah.
I'm actually in that zone again with the Meraki Tarot. I'm kind of in that zone
Yeah.
again. But so that's how that came about. And it was interesting because I think as an artist, um, well, taste is always changing, right? Who you are is always changing. How you see the world changes. And as an artist, you're always changing. So
Yeah.
the way that one would illustrate or paint or whatever um, does change through time. So
Mhm.
that's kind of, and it could be a slow years or it could be a quick like couple months. So I
Yeah.
think that's another thing, is that when I was doing the Meraki Tarot, I kind of found my voice through illustration, I guess,
Yeah.
is how that. And then with Numinous Numerology, that's actually, that smaller deck is one of what's going to be a series of small decks.
Oh,
Um,
amazing.
yeah,
Yeah.
so I'm super excited about that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's
I'm going to have a
amazing.
bunch of series of like Sabbats and moons,
Oh,
like
oh
all
my God.
yeah, so
Oh, that's
that
so
was,
exciting.
yeah, it's kind of fun. I'm super excited about it because I have all these ideas to, so people can have all of these same exact format decks and use
Hmm.
them, on their altar in their life, however, in different ways.
Yeah.
But yeah, that and then again, like the radiant crystal cards, again, this isn't illustrated per se in the way, obviously, that Numinous or the Meraki deck is, but for me, what I was doing was taking the feel of the crystal, yeah, and then
Yeah.
adding the background splash, which
Hmm.
which to me hones in on the feeling of the way I illustrate, but
Yeah.
but pairing it with a crystal, if that
I
makes sense.
love, oh
So
my God, that makes so much sense. And I love how different each of the cards are. Like they each have a really unique feel, but it really captures the feel of the crystal itself. And each one, like I've been pulling them daily for my daily spread, and each one has such a unique feel to it. And I absolutely love that you've included on the back which chakra it associates with, the astrological sign correspondence. The affirmations are incredible. I love it. It captures some of the crystals I've worked with more than others, and so I'm familiar with some meanings more than others
yeah,
would be. But the way that you've created these affirmations, it's such a great way to kind of hone into the energy of each of those crystals. And I love that you have a little blurb about each of the energies at the bottom too, along with um, also a plant correspondence, which is awesome. Like it feels so inclusive of all aspects of the crystal and the correspondence, and it's just such a beautiful tool to work with. And I've seen a few different crystal decks, but I've never looked into getting one because it never quite captured the energy of it. Like either it was just a photo of a crystal, which is great and it's nice, but this has so much more nuance to it, and it's, I think the backsplash really helps kind of pull that meaning and that kind of feel of the crystal through as well, which is just awesome. I'm enjoying working with it so much. It's really an amazing tool, and you've really captured the feel of it so
thank
beautifully.
you.
There's
Thank you
a little
so much.
fangirl
Yeah, no, that means so much to me. I mean,
moment.
just exactly what you said was, yeah, there are a lot of crystal decks out there, and I too have looked at, and I have a few. And they're, everything is always beautiful. Everyone else's work is stunning. But we all connect in different ways with things, right? That's why
Yeah,
it's awesome. There's so much out there that we can all connect with. But I
yeah,
wasn't really finding a crystal deck that I was connecting with, or that was very comprehensive and kind of holistic
yeah.
in its journey. And so, um, yeah, I have to say, I mean, not to like say I'm totally in love with my work here, but I do love this deck
It is
because
great.
I have a horrible memory. So for me, having all this information is great. And I have been also reading with tarot, and I know you have. I mean, I
Yeah,
love all the spreads, and I really have been blown away by how the energy and the meaning of the crystal really enhances the tarot. And
mm-hmm.
I love it because, like, if I'm reading, I can just take this crystal with me and hold it in my pocket throughout the day.
Yeah.
So it's kind of just a fun. It's just a fun thing. Again, I see it used. Kids can use it,
Oh
and
yeah.
I see it
Yeah.
for everyone. Yeah.
Well, there's a metaphysical shop in Truro, about an hour from us here in Nova Scotia, called Calling Corners. and we love it. Like I've gotten to know Sarah, the owner. She's actually my really close friend's husband's cousin. So there's like a
Oh,
little family connection there
that's
too.
awesome.
They have the most incredible crystal wall. And my kids are obsessed. Like every time we go into Truro, they like to go in and pick out a little crystal. My son picked out a couple for my husband to keep on his desk while he's working. And so I think it'll be really fun next time we head in to have them kind of go through the crystal deck and see what they feel drawn to, and then maybe explore that a little bit more. Because I think it adds that whole new layer with all the information that you've added on the back that kind of deepens your understanding and kind of opens it up. Because I find sometimes I'll go in and I'll look and I'll feel drawn to a specific crystal, but I won't really understand why. And then I look at the meaning and all of a sudden it makes sense, because that's something I'm working through. Like morganite is one thing that I had never even heard of until a few months ago. And then I ended up, it was exactly what I needed at the time, because I was working through a few things, and it was just the synchronicity of that. And like you said with tarot, it's fabulous how I didn't really blend decks until, well, I guess about a year ago I started, and it's uncanny to me how it all flows together. Do you know what I mean? Like it can be a tarot deck and an oracle deck, but somehow there's a through line with all of those messages. And it really, with this deck especially, helps to round out that message and that meaning in really beautiful ways. And I love how the aesthetic of the cards really works together beautifully with these. Yeah, it just looks so lovely together. Like they're decks, but there's a crossover in these. Oh, look at that. I picked Opalite and the Queen of Pentacles, and the sky
looking
in the background is like,
isn't it? Yeah, I know. I love it. Yeah.
prime example. Yeah. Oh, so, and I was curious too. I noticed that you mentioned with the second edition of the Meraki that you were making some shifts and changes. And I'm so curious to know what those are going to be and what kind of informed that process for you. And I can so relate to what you said. I have a master's degree in theater history. And I haven't reread my thesis since I got it bound, because I know I'm going to find all the errors or all the things I want to adjust and I want to go back and because nothing's ever finished, right?
No.
And I love when different editions of a tarot deck are slightly different. So the first edition is different from the second edition, and each one kind of has its own special mark or special feel. And that's so special to me, because there's something to be said for things coming out and being the same and the consistency with that. But I personally love those little shifts and changes. Like I know Sarah from Shop the Eighth House, her Eighth House Tarot, each edition is a little bit different. The images are the same, but the edging is a little bit different. The box is a little bit different. Sorry, I'm just going to grab the door. My kids are
no worries. No worries.
Okay, I'm back.
I told my kids to stay out. I'm like, don't come in this room.
I thought they were well occupied, but you know, volume carries.
I know. No, I am so with you. I mean, I love change. I'm constantly changing my glasses, my hair, I mean, everything always. And so the Meraki Tarot, I really see, and I'm actually so excited about this. I see that this deck is totally reimagined.
Yeah.
I think borders are going to come off.
Okay.
The box is going to change, and I am changing cards. I am going to update cards. I love everyone's feedback, and that's just my nature. I appreciate feedback. And so I'm really hearing what people are saying, and I agree with a lot of it. So yeah, I think borders are coming off. Still keep that edging. I love that edging. And what I'm really imagining doing is creating a hardbound book that is a Meraki workbook.
Ooh, I love that idea.
Yeah, so it's a book that goes with the deck, and it becomes something that people can really journey with, and take it through the year or through time, whatever. So there's a lot there that I'm really excited about, and I think my hope is that next year I'm going to kind of do another Kickstarter launch, because I think it's going to be big enough where I would need a Kickstarter to be able to kind of fund like a hardbound book and new deck. And so
that sounds amazing. It'll be so awesome to release them around the same time. And from, I mean, I only have experience with Kickstarter as on the purchasing side, but it seems like it would be a really good platform for that, like the whole crowdfunding concept and being able to pull all of the funds together in advance of production so that you don't have to put it all forward yourself in advance. And then you already have a set number of copies that have been sold, et cetera, et cetera. So that seems to make a lot of sense. And the whole concept of a bound book and workbook, that sounds absolutely phenomenal. It's such a lovely idea. That's great.
I'm excited about it. And I think also a book that is the size of the deck. So kind of a few things. But yeah, it's interesting because when your Kickstarter's so amazing because like where I get my cards printed, you have a minimum, which is like 500. You have to print, so like a lot of these places it would kind of be really hard unless it was a very simplified deck to get the funds for it. Because wow, this stuff it's crazy how, I don't know if it's crazy. I mean, but it's pricey. Like when you get into the specialty papers and all the so
well, and you've gone with such a silky matte finish with this too. Like the cards are very solid, and just the finish is really lovely, and just the finger feel, I guess. And I think when you go with those choices, it's going to push the price up. So it makes sense to do a crowdfunding model because then, and I know a lot of people in the tarot community really appreciate those details and the edging and everything else. And it all contributes to make a really beautiful final product. So you were mentioning with the second one, instead of the bigger size guidebook, it would fit inside.
Yeah, so maybe 2 books is what I'm thinking. One guidebook that is a carry-along, and then one that is a workbook.
Yeah, that's such a
really comprehensive kind of deck and launch, But I mean, I love it when everything seamlessly works together. So it's kind of like that whole, it's the whole package. Yeah, how does everything look and feel, and the experience,
it's so nice to have all those components together, like it's really lovely. So your Radiant Crystal cards are coming out next week on the 7th, right?
For real, on Wednesday.
Oh, that's amazing. And you have a tarot cloth that is launching along with it as well. Yeah, that's super exciting. I have the one for the Meraki deck, and it's so lovely, like the printing and to use as the backdrop and everything. It really really encapsulates the spirit of the deck and brings everything together really beautifully. So that's super exciting also.
Great. I really wanted to have a cloth with it. I'm loving the cloths that artists are doing, and I think it's nice to have that. And I've started wrapping my decks in the cloth, so
amazing.
I was like, oh yeah, gotta have that.
That's a great idea. It works so well. So tell me more about the Numinous. Sorry. This is such a great deck, and I know you said that you were going to release a series on your Etsy shop. I have been coveting, I saw you have a whole series of Zodiac stickers, and then also a journal, what was it called? I made a note of it. The monthly astrology empowerment cards as well. Those are, they're not printable. They come as pre-printed, or how does it?
Because I do have some downloads on there, and then some that I would print. Yeah,
that's such a great idea. I love that with the Numinous deck, you've included birth path numbers and expression numbers, because that adds a whole new way of exploring numbers and numerology. And then there's the soul urge number and personality number, and I love that you've included all of those components along with the deck, because I've had a lot of fun exploring it. And I was just wondering, you've got the front and it's a description, and then on the back it's a more detailed deep dive into each number. So what was the process of creating this deck like, and how did you pick each of the illustrations? Like, they're so beautiful, and I can obviously see that you went with numbers of animals or depictions of things as a reflection of the number that you chose. But Yeah, I was just wondering what that process was like.
Yeah.
Again, like this deck is aesthetically very much in line with the other two, but it still has its own unique feel, and even the background tone is slightly different. So I love that they all correspond so beautifully, and yet they're all distinct, unique decks
Yeah.
as well. It's
A
really
little
cool.
different. Yeah.
Mhm.
So one of my favorite things to do, and what I'm loving about deck creating, is that I can create something that is useful for people. Like with the Meraki Tarot, I had extra cards in it that had
Mhm.
informational cards, you know,
Yeah.
so people could really, and I don't know if that's just for me, because again, my memory is a little on the cuckoo side, but I love being able to just pick something up and you can run with it. You can learn things about it, have fun with it, and not have to necessarily right away go to another book in order to figure things out. And
Yeah.
so the Numinous Numerology, that was just in my mind a really great kickoff to this series I want to do, because numbers is so important to tarot and
Mhm.
astrology, and obviously to life, you know. And
Mhm.
I just thought it would be such a fun way to, if you're reading, maybe pull a number card and
Yeah.
see how it relates to your reading, or even just for
Mhm.
the day that you're in. You know, there's so many fun ways to use it. And
Mhm.
the illustrations, again, I tend to, when I am drawing a card, I tend to just pull the image that comes in out of my head. So if I'm thinking of it, it's kind of like I'm a medium, so I work in
Mhm.
mediumship, and it's kind of the first thing that comes in, right? So it's the first intuitive hit, and
Mhm.
that's what I start illustrating. Um, and then as I go back to it, I'll refine it if something is not just right. But I just kind of allow it to be whimsical, and
Mhm.
and I'm okay with. Again, this goes back to the Meraki, and some cards aren't really like the others, you know. Um, I'm kind of okay with that because I think it's fun. I think it's just part of the
Mhm.
journey, and
Yeah.
part of the expression. I do feel like the Numinous does. I feel like it is cohesive in that little
Yeah.
deck. Um,
Yeah.
but
I
yeah,
feel like Meraki is too, even though like there is differences between different cards, but I feel like they embody the meaning of the cards so much, and there is definitely a through line in the aesthetics. So for me, I didn't even really notice. Like some may be slightly different in terms of the aesthetic, but it
yeah,
wasn't much that I even noticed it or identified it as being all that different.
yeah.
Like I do feel like that there's a really good unified theme throughout. So that's yeah, that's super interesting.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's how I feel too. It's but I can see how people perceive. I can see how
Mhm.
people
Yeah.
are seeing that. But yeah, I think the Numinous, it was just so much fun to do these little, I almost felt like they were little, you know, teeny vignettes. I mean, they are, you know,
Mhm.
just um, on that little square. And I love the format. And again, that hand feel of the card with that
Oh
soft
yeah.
velvety. I know, I'm obsessed with
Mhm.
that.
I can't stop touching them. Like they're honestly like they're so silky, and I
Yeah,
love like the images are just so lovely. And I feel like they really capture the feel of each of the numbers too, which is so awesome. The
I mean, that's
vibrant
the thing.
colors and
I want, when I'm illustrating, my whole feeling is I want everyone to feel that they can jump in and take part.
hmm,
And also too, there's so much to see in an image. You know,
yeah,
when someone is illustrating, because everyone's intuition is going to pull something different out of an image. That's what I love about illustration, and that's what I love about the fact that I just let my whimsy go, because
mhm,
everyone is going to pull something different
yeah,
out of an illustration. I might not even see that I did something that someone would pull out. Uh,
yeah,
and so that's always why I just start with my intuitive hits, because
hmm,
there's something to it, you know, and then
hmm.
I just build off of it. So yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. I know, I would imagine as a creator, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that leaning into your intuition like that would also help prevent you from overthinking it. My brain tends to cycle, and I feel like if I were to try and figure something out in a way that was too structured or too rigid, then I would start overthinking it and then it would kind of fall apart. Whereas if you're going at it intuitively, then it gives you that freedom to create and not, you can always go back and tweak after, but it takes away from that feeling of needing it to be a certain way or a certain thing, if that makes sense.
It totally makes sense. That I mean, that's so right. Getting in our heads, is so. And again, I think it goes back to just what I do for a living, just designing. I'm just constantly putting it out there, getting it built,
Mhm.
and it has to be a very, I don't want to say quick process, but a very like assured process. Like I have to trust myself
Yeah.
and be in a space where I do trust my intuition, because
Mhm.
it is so easy to like look at something and be like, oh my god, I do that right? That is so easy to do. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm so excited to see the evolution of the deck as it comes through and then into the second edition and look at what's different and what's the same and, different aspects and elements. Like it's fascinating to me to see when different editions of the same deck come out, what the changes are and what the similarities are and how things shift and evolve and change over time. I find that whole process fascinating. So
Yeah.
I'm super excited, and the whole journal idea is incredible. I do bullet journaling and I love kind of seeing how things will shift and evolve over the course of a year or 2 years. I just started last year, so I haven't been doing it very long, but it's
Yeah.
that organic process and seeing what works and what doesn't work and then, adjusting as you go. It's awesome. It adds a lot of fluidity to the process, I think, which is really,
Oh, it
yeah.
totally does. And I'm the same. I'm a huge planner. I'm like a planner junkie. Yeah, it's like a problem. But um, yeah, I love it. And I do, there is something about journaling, planning, bullet journaling, all that, where you can flip back and just, even if you don't read something that if you've created a book of notes, you don't read it for
Mhm.
another 5 years, there is something so magical about it, when you just flip through and see what your thought process was, how you've grown. And uh,
Yeah.
I don't know. I also think it's like creating, especially for tarot, when you journal about it or write your thoughts about each card,
Hmm.
you're creating your own book, your own
Yeah.
set of meanings for the cards. And
Hmm.
as we know, it never ends, right? We're always
Yeah.
learning about tarot, always learning
Yeah.
how to read differently or new things. So
Yeah. I think that's where having different decks with different perspectives is so helpful because I know, and I love tarot guidebooks. I absolutely adore them. Like I've become much better at trusting my intuition, but it's so beautiful to see what a creator has had to say and what their perspective is on a specific card. Because every so often I'll read a line that someone's written and it blows open the card in a whole new way that I hadn't even thought of before. Or, it adds this new layer of perception and understanding that is so amazing. And I love the Meraki Tarot guidebook because you've included so much detail. And I love that there's different perspectives of more positive and then maybe more challenging aspects, but it really creates a beautiful way of reflecting on the cards and looking at them in different ways. And I think that's super helpful for, I mean, for anybody coming to tarot, whether you're a well-seasoned reader or new to it. And you'd mentioned the cards. I was the extra added cards that you have, which I absolutely love because I've started incorporating astrology into my tarot practice more frequently. And I love that you have the cards with the associations here for each of the major arcana. And then there's crystal associations, which is incredible. Um, yeah, so there's more for the major arcana. And then the solar system association, which is incredible. And I love that you've added the keywords too for each of the planets. And then, yeah, there's also the astrological signs, which is amazing. And this was one of the things that I noticed first about the deck and I was super excited about because I have a bunch of astrology books, but when you need to find a quick reference and you're just like flipping through, it can be really frustrating when it's not easily accessible. So this quick reference is
Yeah.
amazing. I really appreciate
Oh,
it.
good. Yeah, I thought it was kind of funny at first. I was putting it in, but I was like, no. You know, I mean, I tend to think if I need something, I'm betting many others might too,
Yeah.
or that it might be appreciated. And it's funny because the book, it is interesting that that book. I have had many people say that they like it to be the same size as the deck, which totally
Okay.
understandable. Um, Originally, I had it that large so I could make the text bigger. I have so much trouble. Like, I don't know, I am aging, but reading like this little teeny text. And so I
Yeah.
wanted to feel like, okay, I can really look at the card and breeze through the text without having to like get out a
Get the
magnifying
microphone,
glass. Yeah.
word was on, but
Yeah.
yeah, the little microscope,
Yeah.
yeah,
Exactly.
magnifying glass, that's the word I was looking for.
Yeah. Exactly. So that's how that size came about. But
Yeah. It
yeah.
works. I mean, I find if I'm bringing a deck with me, then I'm bringing it with me regardless. So if there's another booklet that I'm tucking in, that's fine too. And as you said, with the cloth, you can just wrap everything up really
Yeah.
snugly and then tuck it aside, and it works really well. So yeah, I actually really like the size of the book because I found the images are all in color, which I love, but they're also bigger, so you can look at all the detail. And in the book as well as on the card itself, which is, yeah, which is really amazing. So I'm curious with
Yeah.
the crystal deck. Oh, the Pitilite. I love this card so much. So where did you go to look at all the different astrological signs and the different chakra associations? Like I know with this deck, I love that it also comes with the chakra card that talks about all of the different chakras and the points of focus and everything, which is super helpful because if it's not something that you're well versed in, then again, the quick reference, I'm all for it. It's
Yeah.
great. I mean, I've been working with crystals for a long time, but even so, it's helpful to have those associations.
Yeah.
So yeah, like what led you to include all of those elements? What's your history working with crystals? Like what drew you to that? I guess practice, because I think it is a practice as much as tarot is, and I'm so curious. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say I've been working with crystals as long as tarot.
Cool.
It's, you know, it's one of those things I think we all know, like being on a spiritual journey just kind of grabs hold of you at a young age. And
Mm.
I, I grew up in the 70s. I was born in the early 70s. So there was no internet. There was no, yeah. Yeah, there was nothing, right? There was the
Yeah.
library.
Yeah.
So I'm always so intrigued by, you know, the fact that, I mean, since I was teeny tiny, I was so in love with spirit and everything
Mhm.
that was not tangible,
Mhm.
essentially. And so when I got a little bit older and, you know, again, I don't even know how we find out. I don't know, maybe it was the library. I don't know how we find these
Yeah.
things out when when there was no internet or anything, but just getting my first tarot deck and just loving crystals. There's something so candy like about them. And I think
Mhm.
initially, even today, um, when I go to a crystal shop, I'm drawn to the look and the just kind of the energy of it before I
Mhm.
even know necessarily why I need it.
Mhm.
And I would say that that's always how I've kind of approached crystals is I just take in what I feel that I need. And I, like you said, I find out later I needed that or
Yeah.
that was something I wanted to work with. And so for the deck, my research was like all over and there's
Mhm.
an online, one of my favorite online shops, healingcrystals.com.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
They have so much incredible information and schooling on their websites that I've been looking at just for years. I
Oh,
go to
amazing.
them. Uh, and so I got some of my information from there, all over really. Books I've had, crystal books that I've had for years. And I've done a lot of cross referencing because crystals are interesting. You know that like the vibrational number, someone may say 3 and someone may
Mhm.
say 4. You know, it's
Yeah.
it's kind of all over. So again, I know how I feel about the crystals, and
Yeah.
there's 75 crystals in this deck, so I by no means have worked with all 75, because that's, um, there's lots of them in this deck that I haven't worked with, but
Mhm.
just going off of intuition and then backing up my research, because it's very important to get, obviously the chakra right, the
Mhm.
vibrational number,
Yep.
um, because these are all things that we want to take and use
Mhm.
with our other practices,
Yeah.
um, and with magic work and all sorts of things. So yeah, there was a lot
Yeah.
of cross-referencing research, and
Yeah.
with online and then books that I've had.
Yeah. Well, it's very clear to me that a lot of research went into this. Just the level of detail that you've included is amazing. Like I really love it. And I love that these can also be used as like an altar card, or you can carry it with you. Because I know sometimes certain crystals can be hard to source, or are harder to find. So I love that this deck can stand in kind of in lieu of that. If it's hard to track something down, you can still work with that particular energy, working with the image and the association and everything else. Like it's really quite lovely. Yeah, that's
That
really
that's a very good point, because when I started this deck, I was thinking of rendering, illustrating every crystal,
Hmm.
but I put that aside because of exactly what you said. I love being able to see the actual stone crystal.
Mhm.
And if you don't have it, can't get it, this does feel as though it's present in your
Mhm.
space. Um,
Yeah.
and so that was, and also too, I think a lot of crystal decks have the stone rendered. And for some reason,
Mhm.
I personally then was having a little hard time connecting, because it wasn't the actual image. So
Yeah, yeah.
that's where this, this like real with, along with kind of like illustration, I guess, in the
Mhm.
background came to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the affirmations and the energies are again my write-ups, and then I made sure I backed them up, thinking, okay, is what I'm saying actually resonating with that crystal?
Yeah.
Just so I'm not in left field and people are like, what the heck is she talking about on that crystal?
Well, any of the cards that I've pulled so far, like it makes so much sense to me. The affirmation is right in line with the energy that I've worked with in the card. It's so funny because there's 75 cards here, as you said, and I keep getting the same ones. Like I
Oh,
shuffle, and I've even experimented with like different shuffling than what I normally do because like
yeah.
they keep coming out. It's like
Oh,
they keep
wow.
getting the blue lace agate and peridot and blue
Oh,
lace agate and peridot. So obviously I need to work with that
that's
energy,
so
right? And
funny.
it makes sense with what I'm dealing with in that particular day,
Yeah.
or some of the vibes of right now. Like that blue lace agate feels like a very Cancer feeling, nurturing, soothing for those of us who have a nonstop brain. Like it's super
Yeah.
helpful. It's just so fun. And then I tried to like shift up the shuffling. I'm like, am I just like not shuffling properly? So it's
Yeah.
coming up. But no, it's consistent. And I was like, okay, time to take note, right? And that I think is what's so interesting about repeat cards. It's such a great way to dig a bit deeper, because I know when, let's say, the Knight of Pentacles comes up for the fourth time in 2 weeks or a week, that I need to take a deeper dive into that card and really look closely at it. And then when you have other tools like the numerology deck or a crystal deck, that can almost help expand the understanding of that tarot card, because it adds a new layer and depth of understanding. And as we were talking about earlier, like the synchronicity between the cards is uncanny sometimes. Like it will be almost verbatim a similar message throughout, or the crystal card will work in support of some of the tougher energy. Like if I pull a Tower card or a Ten of Swords, which I did on the same day, I was kind of like, okay, interesting, I gotta maybe brace myself a
Time
little bit,
to
see
go
what's gonna
to
happen.
yeah.
And then the crystal card that I pulled was very soothing and very nurturing, and it felt like it really balanced out some of those tougher energies, right? And that being said, I don't think that there's anything that's inherently positive or negative. I think some of the beauty of both the crystals and the tarot, there's different aspects to all of the cards. So it's not like one, like the Devil card and the Tower card and like the three and kind of swords, Nine of Swords too, tend to get a really bad rap as being really like terrible, difficult cards, all the fives. And they can be, and oftentimes they're referring to things that need to be taken care of. But then there's also this flip side to it that can be really nurturing and call your attention to what needs healing. And so I'm getting long-winded here, but I love, that's all to say, I love that things can work together in really cohesive ways and create those supports for you in the format of a reading, right?
Yeah, I feel exactly the same. I'm with you, is that, I don't know, I would say maybe a couple years ago I started pairing. I started pairing
Mhm.
Oracle with Tarot, and I was like,
Yeah.
wow, this is really intriguing. I mean, because life is not, life is even in a day or a minute is so ever changing, and just having that different way of saying something between
Yeah.
an oracle and tarot, or I mean, even this crystal deck is really like an oracle, you know, in a way, is that the messages together mean more, I
Yeah.
think, sometimes than they do separate, which is
Hmm.
just so like life, you know, just saying
Yeah.
one, more than one word is very
Yeah.
important, to
Yeah.
get the big picture. Yeah.
Yeah, it really deepens the understanding of that particular message, which is so awesome.
Yeah.
So I noticed on your Etsy page too that you had some beautiful dried flower arrangements with selenite and Palo Santo. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's very cool. How
Yeah.
did those come about?
I just love making those. They're just those little, they're kind of like little selenite bundles. And
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I don't know. It's the tchotchke thing in me or something,
Yeah.
but I love it, and I just put them around. I have some that I make for my home, and I just put them around, and they smell amazing, right? So sometimes I just pick it up to smell it as I'm walking by.
Yeah,
Um, I love them, yeah.
yeah.
And so now and then I'll just put some on Etsy, and
Yeah.
yeah,
It was
they're
a
really,
beautiful selection, and dried flowers are so lovely because they last.
yeah.
We have a kitten who's, I guess, maybe 7 or 8 months old now, so I'd have to put them very high up
Oh
because very good at getting at things. But I don't know, there's something really magical about that, you know, because I love flowers, but I always feel a bit sad when they start to fade and wilt. And
yeah,
we have some potted flowers and different things and made sure they were all pet friendly. Yeah, there's something really magical, and from a sustainability aspect too, with having something that's dried and you can have year round. And as you said, putting them in different parts of the house and having different feel for the different
yeah.
plants included. So what's your creation process with that? Like, do you follow, I know you had said earlier that you thrive on change, so I'm guessing maybe that each one's a little different, or do you follow kind of, yeah, your instincts with it, or how do you create them, I guess is my question.
Yeah, so I just love the selenite and then the Palo Santo together. And
Yeah.
that's the other thing I love about, I know Palo Santo isn't, we don't want to use a lot of it, so I love it in the bundle because it just stays there. I don't
Yeah.
burn them. I just, and
Yeah.
the fragrance I mean, I have some I did like 2-3 years ago,
Yeah.
that are amazing. So I actually
Hmm.
don't burn it. I just keep it in the bundle.
Hmm.
And also the sage, which we don't really want to purchase a lot of and
Hmm.
burn all the time, that also lasts. And then for the dried flowers, we have Washington, we have Pike's Market. And
Oh,
so
I've been there, it's lovely.
it's
Yeah.
amazing. And
Yeah.
I mean, anyone that lives here and goes down to the market with the dried flowers there are like unbelievable.
Oh.
So now and then I'll go down there, or anywhere I can get dried flowers. Sometimes I'll buy them online from companies that have like beautiful dried
Hmm.
flowers, and I'll just, you know, get bundles of them and then just
Hmm.
make different. I'm always thinking of color combination. I love color combination. So that's kind of how I put it together. But
Yeah.
yeah, they're
Oh,
just
that's
so,
lovely.
they're cheery. I don't know. They just kind of make you smile. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such
Yeah.
a nice element because it brightens up the space so much.
Yeah.
Really
Yeah.
cool.
For years.
And I noticed too, so with your mini decks, like I know you mentioned that you were going to do another series. Do you have astrology in mind for that? I'm asking just because I noticed that you had the astrology empowerment cards that you can fill out with your own kind of thoughts and perspectives on each month. So I was just
Yeah.
curious. Yeah.
I have moon astrology, Sabbath. I have a list.
Oh,
I have
amazing.
like the longest list of
Yeah.
projects, which I'm super excited about.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm not like, for example, astrology. I am not an astrologer. Like, that is not an expert for me. But I think it's fun because these little, any information that I research, like Teresa Reed, she is
Mm,
so inspirational for me. I have
yeah.
her book, and I mean, you know, we're all learning from each other, and just kind
Mm,
of those little decks I feel are just nuggets
mm,
of whimsical information that we can all just take and have fun with,
yeah.
and play with. So
Yeah.
um, yeah, so I'm planning definitely on that.
Oh, that's so
Yeah,
exciting. So
yeah.
when you create decks, do you do them simultaneously? Do you focus on one thing at a time, or are you able to, do you focus on splitting between different projects and go from one to the other? I'm so always so curious about that because I typically have like 4 or 5 books on the go at the same time, and I'm reading like a book on astrology and then a book on tarot. Like my brain's constantly in different areas, and I have so much respect for single-minded focus. And yet it's always fascinating to me to see how different creators explore different projects. Like I know with Chris Ann from Pixie Curio, I have both of her Kickstarter decks for the Muse and the Light Seers, and I know that she had started with the Light Seers and then the Muse came up
I
kind
know.
of as part of that process. And it was so fascinating to
Yeah,
watch along the development and see how there was these two very different elements that came through at the same time, and they can still be used beautifully together, but each has a distinct feel. And it was fascinating to me that she created them at the same time because they are very different.
exactly. It
Yeah,
that is amazing. I know, because yeah, it's like splitting the brain, and then when you're
yeah,
illustrating, it's like, okay, now I'm in this mode, or I'm in that mode, or
yeah.
yeah. Um, I like to do a lot of things at once. Again, I think that's just my nature. I sometimes I do too many things at once, so I have to try to pare back because
Yeah.
it gets a little overwhelming. But yeah, like I've already started working on the second edition of the Meraki Tarot, so that,
Mhm.
and then yeah, and you know, I'll get like this inspiration, like, oh my god, I have to start this, like I have to start this deck right
Yeah,
now. So I just
yeah,
like go and I start it,
yeah.
and um, it's interesting. I find that when I just listen to myself and start what I need to, or work on what I need to work on, it
Hmm.
just flows. You
Yeah.
know, if I try to say, no, don't do that right now because it's too much, I almost worry that it's halting
Yeah.
something I'm supposed to do. Um,
Yeah.
so I work on a lot at once, and I try not to voice that honestly to people, because I think it sounds a little like a little crazy. Like, how many things can you do at once? But um, everything is very focused. I'm always extremely focused on that particular thing. My whole energy is in it when I'm doing it.
Hmm.
So that's for every item. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as someone who often has multiple pokers in the fire at the same
Yeah.
time, I totally understand that. And it's interesting because it's not like focusing on one is taking away from the other. It's almost like that creative fire helps fuel both projects at the same time. And it's yeah, it's almost that supportive process of nurturing and adding to both simultaneously, which is so interesting.
That's
Oh, that's so cool. Oh, I
yeah.
love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is do you find that there's a crossover in terms of the creative energy that you're putting into each of the decks, or is it very separate? Like when you're moving from one to the other, you need to consciously shift gears, or is there a little bit that kind of a bit of crossover, I guess?
Hmm.
I'm curious about that.
Yeah, I feel like there's a crossover probably. I feel so my main thing is really when I am in a certain project, I am like 100% in it, and I'm just, my eyeballs, my intuit, like everything is like, does this look right? You know, so I'm so
Mhm.
invested at that time. But
Mhm.
when I cross to another deck, it feels seamless that I just kind of jump in there, and that I'm
Mhm.
very focused on that and making it I say perfect. There is no such thing as perfect, but we all have a perfect in our own eyes,
Yeah.
So I just try to create the perfection that I see for that. So, but it seems like going from one to another is pretty seamless. Like
Yeah.
there's no hiccup. I don't feel like when I kind of go back and forth. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
But
very cool.
again, I think that is interesting because like for what I do for my career, I might be designing for 4 to 5 different tech companies,
Mm-hmm.
and my designs are, every space is very different, so
Mm-hmm.
my mind is very used to jumping
Yeah.
on many different projects and
Yeah.
designing many. So I think I think I've just trained my brain to do that or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I love what you said too. Like I have a couple of really dear friends that are seasoned astrologers, and I've learned so much from both of them. And I found I would get really intimidated because I feel like, well, I'm not an expert in astrology, so how can I, put this forward? But then I realized that it's okay for me to learn alongside whoever is participating. I'm running an astrology tarot thing right now, and for each month, or not even each month, it's astrological season, and it's been refreshing to give myself permission to explore
Mhm.
and to recognize that expertise is so valuable and I cherish it, but then I can also come in with a newer perspective and investigate as I go. And I think I always put that pressure on myself to need to be an expert right out of the gate, right? And
Yeah.
I love that it's still possible to create these things that are super useful and really helpful and can come from a place of learning and a place of exploration, because I
Oh,
think there's a lot of value in that as well, right? Because I
yeah.
think a lot of practices can feel inaccessible to people because there's that expectation of you have to have this degree and you have to have that certification in order to do it, right? But I think part of the power of these practices is that they are open and accessible to anyone. Like you can come to tarot as a new practitioner, as a more seasoned practitioner, same with astrology, same with numerology. Like these are all tools that help us deepen our spiritual practice. And I think having that be accessible is really important, right?
Yeah. I completely agree. And I mean, I am such a believer we cannot know everything. One person cannot and absolutely should not know everything. I mean, it's overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I love about our community and about just the community all over the world of magic seekers and astrologers and tarot readers and what have you, is that we're all learning from each other. There's never full knowledge because that's impossible, right? I mean, there's always more to know and learn,
Mm-hmm.
and just those little decks I'm doing, that's one of the things I love about them. Again, they're just nuggets of enough information
Yeah.
that we can take and then like go to like Teresa Reed's book, which is amazing,
Yeah.
and kind of pair it with that, or help, or that could be a learning tool along with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I totally agree. It's
Yeah, I love that. I like there's people that have all kinds of expertise in these areas, and I love to learn from them so much. It's so valuable. Like Tom Benjamin has a couple of Tom Benjamin Tarot, Bengella, that has some amazing books out that are great tools for learning tarot. And then there's Parker's Astrology, there's all of Teresa Reed's books, and it's so fascinating to me. I feel like with these practices, I could study them till the day I die, and there's always something more to learn.
yeah.
And the Mercury and Sun and Gemini that I have is so excited about that, because there's so many layers, and each person you talk to has a unique perspective on all of these areas, and it can open up, like reading different tarot guidebooks or different tarot books, it can open up your understanding of the practice in really beautiful new ways, right? And I think there's something really valuable in that. And yet also the little reference cards are so valuable because they give you those little nuggets of information that can plant that seed and inspire you to then turn to the book and look a little deeper into that particular card or that particular astrological correspondence. So it really opens up the practice in a really beautiful way.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it's interesting. I always think like how many tarot books are there out there, but you
Yeah.
can read every single one and they're all unique,
Hmm.
which I find is so amazing. there's just never, we should all give and produce what we can, give from our souls what we love, because it's always going to be unique and different from someone else. So yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, my tarot cloth in the back is kind of covering it up, but I have huge stacks of decks, books, all kinds of stuff. This is actually our closet, which is also my tarot space. I have my desk set up in here and everything.
I love it.
But my husband, like, he's not a tarot practitioner. He's so supportive of this practice, but if he were ever to take it on, he would have one deck, and that would be what he would use, and that would be his tool. He's like, why do you need more than one deck? But I find each one has something different to offer, whether it's the visual image, whether it's the guidebook that comes with it, where it's a few lines that just, you know, break that whole understanding open in really beautiful ways. So yeah, that makes so much sense to me.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, I know. That's why we all have way too many decks.
Oh my goodness, it's the thing. My inner magpie is like...
I know, it's like, oh my God, you gotta have a yearly deck haul, but they're all so amazing. I love seeing everyone's art, everyone's expression. Yeah.
And I've gotten to know so many amazing people in this community, and when you get to know someone personally and then you get to work with something they've created artistically, it's such a beautiful thing. Like, it just adds this whole layer of understanding and appreciation to it when you've actually gotten to know that person. I mean, even this jumpsuit that I'm wearing is by a friend of mine in Toronto, and she's a designer. We've known each other since high school, so like 25 years now. Yeah. And every time I pick out one of her pieces from my closet and I put it on, it's got a really special correspondence to it, because it was made by someone that I care about so deeply, you know. And that extends to this community too. The more I get to know people, the more I appreciate their work, and it just adds that extra layer of love and appreciation for the decks and the books. And because you can see how much love everyone puts into it, and how much dedication and time and intention, and that's such a beautiful thing, you know. It's really fantastic.
It really is. This community is really unbelievable and supportive. I mean, you know, it's vulnerable when we're all, even in a post, when someone puts a post out and it's a vulnerable thing, and just how we all connect and support each other, and it's really amazing. So yeah.
And it's unique too. I mean, I've been involved in yoga community. I was involved in health and wellness for a time, and finally had to step back from that almost completely, just because anyway, it's a process. But the difference that I found with this account and this community, I mean, the level of support, the level of encouragement, the level of genuine love and connection, you know, I never thought that was something that I could find in an online community. I mean, social media gets such a bad rap, and often rightly so, but there is that level of support and encouragement and lifting that happens, I feel, within this community. I'd say metaphysical community, because it incorporates tarot, it incorporates astrology, it incorporates so many different disciplines. And I think by and large there is a level of support that's really beautiful to see.
I agree. It's funny because, I mean, again, like I said, I'm from the early 70s, so me getting into social media is kind of like a later thing in life, you know, and even understanding it, which is not great even now, but you know, it is such a beautiful thing. Life is so challenging, and when we can have communities that support each other, and it's okay not to be perfect, right? It's okay to show that you're human, and that we're all on this experience journey together. I just love it. Like, and I'm part of the planner community too. I don't know if you. And
I haven't even delved into that.
Oh my gosh. That is another community. They are it's like the sweetest people. And it's just, you know, it's like, hey, we're just here showing what we love, showing what we do. It's incredible.
I did end up looking up a lot of posts on bullet journals just to get design inspiration for my first one. And I have to say, it's been a bit sporadic with COVID. I didn't really have anything to put in, and so I just kind of, I mean, I've started it up again, because I feel like there's importance. It gets into almost this Groundhog Day feeling of repetition, and then one day, you know, bleeding into another. So I found going back to my journaling practice has been super helpful because it's allowed me to differentiate between different days of the week and different events and find some ease and flow with that to create some distinction, right? But yeah, it's a great practice for that too, and to connect and find some uniqueness in every day and kind of mark that time. But yeah, I mean, I was born in 1979 and I still remember setting up my first internet account. And I mean, my kids don't believe me when I tell them that back in the day, if I had to research something, I had to hunt foot it to the library and grab a book off the shelf. And they're like, what?
Right. Go through
the old dial phones, and they're like, what? Like the rotary dial? I'm like, yeah, that's what I had. And we're seeing it in a museum now. And I'm just like, oh my God.
I know, isn't it? I kind of miss it all. I mean, even today, my cell phone, I'm like, do I really need this? I do actually now because there are no landlines, but yeah.
I remember going to a shopping mall in Calgary, Chinook Center, and it's massive. It's like 2 floors and takes up like 3 city blocks. It's ridiculous. And I ended up getting a cell phone. I want to say it was my first cell phone, maybe, because my husband and I lost each other. Like I lost him for literally 2 hours.
Oh my God.
And it was ridiculous. I think we were picking something up I seem to remember my eldest was a baby at the time and she was there and I had the stroller and everything. I was trying to find something for her. And yeah, so we literally lost each other and I was like, okay, now it's time. I'm going to cave.
This is so funny. Isn't that funny? I always think back, I'm like, I used to tour with the Grateful Dead for years.
Oh, amazing.
There were no there was so I'd call my parents. This is terrible. I'm saying this on the thing, but they wouldn't even know where I was. I would just call them from a payphone. There was nothing. Yeah, you could be all over. Yeah, if you lost someone, oh my God, forget it. You'd have to go on the big speaker and they would literally call.
I was starting to wonder if I'd ever see him again. I mean, obviously we would. I was going to go camp out in the car or whatever. And we ended up just randomly finding each other, but it was like a whole thing, right? And yeah, and like, you know, there used to be payphones everywhere and now there's not payphones anymore. Like when you see one, it's like this like elephant in the room is unicorn, right? And my kids always kind of look at it a bit skeptically. And I'm like, yeah, that used to be how you would communicate, you know? And even thinking about COVID, and I mean, we studied the 1918 flu pandemic the year before COVID, thankfully, because I homeschool my kids. And I'm so grateful that we had that point of reference because I don't think I could have studied it during this because it was too close to home. But looking at how people were communicating and receiving information and finding out about loved ones, and it was all through the newspaper or letters or maybe the odd phone call, but it just... thinking about the level of connection that we've been able to have, as difficult as the past year has been, there is that connection point. And I think that's where this community also has become especially important and relevant in drawing people together because, you know, with the isolation that's happened, it's really created a connection point that was much needed, I think.
Oh, absolutely. There's so much miracle that comes from it, from connecting and I mean, just us seeing each other in person, it's so tangible, you know, it's just, it's so magical where how would we really do it otherwise or you know, traveling or it's just amazing. Yeah,
I mean, we've moved a ton in the past 10 years with our kids. My girls were born in Calgary and then we moved to St. John's, Newfoundland, where my son was born, and then we were in Victoria for a while and then spent 2 years traveling almost. And then now we're on the East Coast. So we have people spread out all over the place. And being able to do a Zoom call with my friends that are out in BC, I mean, it makes all the difference. It makes the distance seem much more negligible, right? It's such a gift for sure.
I know, it really is. Yeah.
So I'm just going to ask, I have no idea how we're doing time-wise.
I know.
But I lost complete track, which is a sign of a good conversation. But I was just wondering, I wanted to find out more about Kickstarter, when you're launching. Well, I mean, it's obviously on Kickstarter, but the Radiant Crystal, it's on Wednesday the 7th. What time does everything launch?
9 a.m. Pacific time.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Yep, so 9 a.m. I have made the launch even better. I've tweaked a few things, and I have amazing collaborations.
That's great.
Jenna from Moonlit Fae and one with Jamie from Blind Luck Co. And I mean, they're just incredible. Again, it's just being able to to highlight all of us, you know, highlight
Yeah.
Jenna and Jamie, and
Yeah.
so
Oh,
they're
both of them are phenomenal.
amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I've been able to tweak the Kickstarter just a little bit.
Mhm.
So one offering is for everyone. So I'm just super excited about it. And
Yeah.
yeah, so that's Wednesday at 9 Pacific.
Oh, so exciting. That's amazing. Yeah, Jenna is phenomenal. Her bags are so gorgeous. And
Oh,
Jamie is both of them are amazing creators in their own right. And with this collaboration with you, it just brings everything up and you're able to support each other. And it's
yeah,
just, I was so excited when I saw that you had those offerings as well
yeah,
for the Kickstarter, because that's such a special way to bring community together, you know,
yeah,
and promote the work of different people. And it's really quite incredible.
yeah. I love it. I mean,
Yeah.
I love creating to connect. I love creating to bring happiness, joy, and to work with others. I mean, that's how we all flourish, I feel like, is
Yeah.
when we just really do what we can to support. And
Yeah.
so, man, I'm just all for it. So yeah, I'm super
Yeah.
excited about it.
Oh, that's incredible. Me too.
Yeah.
Great. Yay. So do you have, I know it's probably difficult to choose. What are some of your favorite crystals from the crystal deck? Do you have
Oh,
any that you feel particularly drawn to, maybe right
uh,
now or in general?
here I'm looking, my head is down because I'm actually looking through the deck. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, right now, Sunstone
Oh, that's
in the
gorgeous.
summertime
Yeah, yeah.
just feels like a popsicle. I don't know. There's something about when I
Yeah.
hold Sunstone, it feels so cooling, you know?
Mhm.
And I'm just looking, I always love Labradorite.
Yes,
That is,
such a special stone.
that's all. And Lepidolite, I love.
Hmm.
And, you know, I don't want to pull out. There is one, I'm looking for one, if I can find it. You know how when you're looking for something, it's at the very end?
Yep, absolutely. That's always the way of it. Well, I was actually curious to go through and look at the different astrological correspondences for the card. Oh my gosh, yes. Gorgeous.
I am in love. I have been in love
Yeah.
with moss agate
Hmm.
since I think I was like 5.
Oh,
I'm
gorgeous.
in jewelry, and I
Mhm.
just love it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's got such beautiful patterns and the different blends of color and stuff. It's just gorgeous.
yeah. Oh,
Yeah. No, but like I think it would be really awesome to look through this deck and look at what the different astrological correspondences are, and then maybe look at pulling aside those crystals to work with over the course of that month. If it's Aquarius season, pulling the different crystals that correspond with that, and really kind of taking a deep dive into it. And I think that
yeah.
would be
That's
really
a great
fascinating.
idea. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, I love it. Yep. So
that's a
many
great
ways to use all these
yeah,
decks.
yeah, yeah. Oh, I know, and
Oh,
they all kind of blend together in really beautiful ways too.
yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
Oh,
Well, thank you so much for meeting with me. This is super exciting. This is actually the first deck creator interview that I've done, so
oh,
it's like very exciting.
I'm so honored,
Thank
and I
you.
love seeing you in person here. This
Yeah,
is
such a
really
treat.
nice. Yeah.
Oh,
Thank you
it's
so
been
much for
absolutely
having me.
wonderful. Oh, thank you so much for joining me. This is
Yeah.
absolutely wonderful.
Yeah. I love
Great.
it. And thanks everyone, whoever joined.
Oh, thank you so much for joining us. It's wonderful.
All
Awesome.
right.
Well, I'm so excited about the Kickstarter on Wednesday. That's going to be great. And anyone who's interested in signing up for notification, they can go to your page. And I think you have a link in your bio for that, right? For
I do.
notification.
Yep.
Yeah,
Link in
that's
bio and
wonderful.
link on my website. So
Oh,
yeah.
that sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Yay. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me about all of this. This has been so lovely, and it's so great to see you in person, so to speak.
I know, right?
Yeah, it's so lovely.
You too. Thank you. Big
Thank
hug.
you. Big
Talk
hugs
to
and
you
have a
soon.
wonderful weekend. Yeah, sounds great. Take
Oh,
care.
you too. Bye bye.
Bye.